Some people do good when they know someone's watching. But the rare ones, the ones who change everything, do good even when no one sees. This is the story of Clarence Moore, a 57-year-old night shift security guard working at a sleek office tower in downtown Chicago. To the world, he's invisible. No one says his name. No one asks how he's doing. Most people walk past him without a second glance. But Clarence? He remembers everyone's name. He holds doors open when it's raining. He helps young interns find their cars at 3 a.m. He works hard, quietly with dignity, even when no one claps for him. One rainy night, Clarence notices a little girl, standing alone in the street, frozen in fear as a black SUV barrels toward her. Without thinking, he runs. He pulls her back, seconds before the car crashes into a lamppost. He says nothing afterward. No bragging. No asking for credit. What Clarence doesn't know. The girl he just saved is Madeline Ashcroft, granddaughter of Nathan Ashcroft, billionaire founder of the Ashcroft global empire, and owner of the very building Clarence guards every night. What happens next will change Clarence's life forever. But not because he asked for it. Not because he expected it. But because, finally, someone saw him. Speech balloon, if you believe kindness deserves to be seen, leave a comment below. Thumbs up like this video if it touched your heart, even just a little. Bell and subscribe for more emotional, real-life stories that prove good people still exist. Chicago, 5:32 p.m. Late autumn. The sky hangs heavy over the city, gray like wet cement. Streetlights flicker on early, their yellow glow stretching across empty sidewalks and windswept leaves. Office workers spill out of skyscrapers like a drained tide, heading home with their collars turned up against the cold. But for Clarence Moore, the day is just beginning. He steps off the 92 bus, shoulders slightly hunched under his navy blue security jacket. It's worn at the seams, the stitching coming loose on one sleeve. He adjusts his cap and grips the strap of his backpack. Inside, a thermos of weak coffee, 2 peanut butter sandwiches, a folded-up rain poncho, and a photo of his wife that he hasn't taken out in months. Clarence is 57 years old, African-American, tall, a little thin around the face now. Years ago, he had broader shoulders, a firmer step, but time and life, and the kind of pain that leaves no bruises, have whittled him down. His eyes, though, they're still sharp, observant, kind. They've seen a lot. Too much, probably. Clarence used to be a firefighter. 15 years ago, he was the one running into burning buildings while everyone else ran out. Saved kids, helped families carry what little they could out of the smoke. He was strong, proud, respected. Then came the accident. A steel beam collapsed during a factory fire on the west side, landed across his left leg. 6 surgeries later, he was medically discharged. He went from saving lives to being too slow for physical duty. Then came the hospital bills, then the debt, then the late nights delivering pizza and newspapers to keep the lights on, and then came the day he buried Elaine, his wife of 22 years. Leukemia. It ate her up in just 8 months. The insurance barely covered the funeral. Their son, Malcolm, couldn't take it. He was only 16, angry, lost. One night, after a shouting match Clarence still plays in his head, Malcolm packed a bag and walked out the door. That was 12 years ago. Clarence hasn't heard from him since. He doesn't tell people this. Doesn't wear his pain on his sleeve. He just shows up. Every night. Same job. Same uniform. Same building. The place is called Ashcroft Tower, 42 floors of high-end offices, tech firms, law firms, a hedge fund, 2 co-working spaces, and 1 penthouse nobody talks about. The lobby is all marble and glass, with tall, rotating doors and brushed metal accents. Every inch is polished, sterile, expensive. Clarence's shift starts at 6 p.m. and ends at 6 a.m. Graveyard. 12 hours of mostly silence, unless there's a break-in, a fire drill, or someone locks themselves out of their office after midnight. He arrives early. Always has. At 5:30 sharp, he clocks in, adjusts the front desk chairs, wipes the door handles with sanitizer, and puts on soft jazz over the building sound system. Helps the night breathe better, he once told a cleaner. She smiled, nodded, and never spoke to him again. Most people pass Clarence without a glance. Men in tailored suits, women in heels too expensive to walk in, interns juggling laptops and iced coffee. Some give him a nod. Most don't. To them, he's just the guy who opens the door. The guy who pushes the elevator button when their hands are full. The guy who checks the security logs when someone forgets where they parked. Invisible labor. But Clarence sees everyone. He knows which employees stay late too often, which ones leave crying, which ones sneak food to the janitorial staff. He doesn't judge. He just watches. And sometimes he helps. 2 weeks ago, a junior marketing rep, young, pale, exhausted, collapsed on the steps outside after working 16 hours straight. Everyone else kept walking. Clarence brought her water, sat beside her, called her a cab, gave her a pack of crackers from his bag. She didn't remember his name the next day. Didn't matter. There's a rhythm to the nights. At 8 p.m., the cleaning crew arrives. Clarence lets them in, hands them a fresh pot of coffee if he's brewed some. At 10:15 p.m., the last law associate on floor 17 usually leaves, shoulders slumped, eyes red. At midnight, Clarence walks the building all 42 floors, checks each door, notes any odd sounds, strange smells, flickering lights. He doesn't have to go up every floor. It's not technically required, but he does, because to him, doing the job right means doing it fully, even if no one sees it. His body aches more these days. The left knee stiffens when it's cold. His back locks up if he sits too long, but Clarence moves through it. You don't stop walking just because the road gets rough, he once muttered to himself in the stairwell. He eats his dinner in the tiny security booth near the loading dock, usually around 2 a.m. He keeps the lights dim, eats slow, listens to the old radio that still plays Sam Cooke, Marvin Gaye, Donny Hathaway. Bring It On Home to Me is his favorite. He hums along while dipping his sandwich in coffee. It's a habit he picked up years ago when bread was dry and coffee was the only hot thing around. Above him, 42 stories of glass and ambition sleep. And down below, Clarence keeps watch. Alone, underrated, unseen, but never bitter. That's the thing. Even after everything, the injury, the death, the silence from his son, the endless nights, Clarence never lost his grace. He believes in doing right, not because the world will repay you, but because it's the only thing that keeps you human. But sometimes, life has a funny way of circling back. One quiet night, as rain begins to patter against the revolving glass doors, Clarence sees something out of place on one of the monitors. A small figure, out in the street. A child, alone, in the middle of the road. Then headlights. Then a black SUV, skidding, out of control, barreling toward her. Clarence doesn't hesitate. 11:43 p.m. The rain had picked up. Clarence was halfway through his third round of hallway checks when he passed the front lobby and noticed the doors rattling lightly in the wind. A steady drizzle tapped against the massive panes of glass that made up the front of the building. He paused at the desk. Monitors flickered in front of him, 12 security cams on split screen, elevators, side exits, parking garage, the sidewalk outside. He took a sip from his thermos. Lukewarm, bitter. Just then, a flash of movement caught his eye on the lower left camera, Street View South entrance. A child, tiny figure, alone, out there in the rain. No coat, no umbrella. He leaned in, frowning. She was maybe 6, standing at the curb, holding something pink, a tiny umbrella, and looking up at the sky like it had just started singing. Behind her, a woman, late 30s, maybe the nanny, was pacing nearby, phone pressed to her ear, half yelling at someone over Bluetooth. She turned away for a moment, and that's when it happened. A stray cat dashed across the road, tail high, disappearing into the shadows. The little girl, curious, stepped off the curb, slowly, like she'd seen a puzzle she wanted solved. Clarence sat up straight. Then the headlights came. A black SUV tore around the corner, too fast for the wet street. Wheels locked, horn blaring. The girl froze. Clarence didn't think. He was already moving. He threw open the front door, sprinting across the slick marble lobby. His boots hit the sidewalk with a thud. Rain hit him instantly. Cold, sharp, soaking through his uniform in seconds. He ran faster than he had in years. Heart pounding, old knee screaming. The little girl was still there, frozen like a statue, face pale, eyes wide. Clarence hit the street, arms out. He scooped her up just as the SUV skidded past, barely missing the both of them before crashing into a stop sign with a sickening crunch of metal and sparks. The nanny screamed. Clarence stumbled back to the curb, still holding the girl against his chest. She was shaking. So was he. But she was safe. The driver stumbled out, yelling, "I didn't see her! I didn't see her!" Over and over. The nanny was on her knees, sobbing, reaching out. Clarence gently passed the girl over. She didn't want to let go. "It's okay, baby," he whispered. "You're okay now." The girl looked up at him, her small hand still clutching his soaked collar. Then came the sirens. People from the building were crowding by the front glass. A few security guards had run down from the garage level. Everyone was suddenly wide awake. But Clarence? He was just soaked to the bone, knees aching, breathing hard. A paramedic came by and asked if he was okay. "I'm good," Clarence said. "She okay?" "She's fine. Thanks to you." Clarence just nodded, and that was that. He walked back inside. Soaked, limping, silent. He went straight to the break room. Changed into the spare clothes he kept in a bag under the desk, old sweats, and a t-shirt with a faded fire department logo on it. He didn't say a word to anyone. Didn't tell his supervisor. Didn't expect a medal. He just sat there, quiet, watching the cameras. But 39 floors above, Nathan Ashcroft had watched the whole thing. Not the news reports. Not secondhand gossip. Live. Nathan had been working late, reviewing contracts, looking over numbers that most people would never understand. He had turned to check one of his internal building security feeds, something he occasionally did, more out of paranoia than curiosity, and that's when he saw it. Every second. The girl in the street. The SUV. The man in the soaked uniform, sprinting without hesitation. The impact. The aftermath. And he recognized her instantly. Madeline. His granddaughter. "Who is that?" Nathan asked aloud, voice sharp. He didn't wait for an answer. He picked up the phone. By morning, the building was buzzing with whispers. Not about Clarence, not yet, but about the accident. About how the security guy saved a kid, or some old guy ran into the street. Clarence didn't correct anyone. He came in early, like always, limped a little more than usual. Sat at the desk with a heating pad on his leg and a cup of black coffee in his hands. It was just another day, until 10:15 a.m., when the building manager stepped out of the elevator holding a small white envelope. "Clarence," he asked. Clarence stood up, stiffly. "Someone on 39 wants to speak with you." "Me?" "Yeah. Said to bring this." He handed over the envelope. Clarence opened it. Inside was a handwritten note, elegant script on expensive paper. "Mr. Moore, I'd like to speak with you privately. No obligations. No expectations. Just two men having a conversation." Nathan Ashcroft. Clarence blinked. He had never been to the 39th floor. That was for executives, important people. Not the man who fixed vending machines and carried broken printers down the freight elevator. But he buttoned up his jacket, wiped his hands on his slacks, and took the elevator. The doors opened to silence. Thick carpets, soft lighting, abstract paintings on the walls. It smelled like money and power. A young woman poised in a charcoal suit greeted him. "Mr. Moore? This way, please." He followed her down a short hall and into a room that looked more like an art gallery than an office. Floor-to-ceiling windows, leather chairs, a wall of books, and standing at the far end was Nathan Ashcroft himself. Gray-haired, tall, stoic, the kind of presence that filled a room even when he said nothing. "Mr. Moore," Nathan said, stepping forward and extending his hand. Clarence hesitated, then took it. Firm grip, calloused hand. Not what he expected. "Please, sit." Clarence sat slowly. His knee popped as he did. Nathan sat across from him, looked at him for a long time. "I saw what you did last night," Nathan said, finally. "I watched it live. I watched you run into that street, knowing full well you could have been killed. Clarence said nothing. I want to thank you, Nathan continued. That little girl is my granddaughter. Clarence blinked. I didn't know, sir. I saw her and... You didn't have to know, Nathan cut in. That's the point. He leaned back. You didn't hesitate. You didn't ask who she was. You didn't ask for anything after. Clarence shifted in his seat. I'm just glad she's safe. Nathan stared at him. You're not just a security guard, Mr. Moore. Clarence smiled faintly. That's what it says on the badge. Nathan chuckled. Well, maybe it's time we printed a new badge. Clarence raised an eyebrow. Nathan folded his hands together. Who make this world better quietly? And you, Mr. Moore, you are exactly that kind of person. Clarence's throat tightened. I didn't do it to be seen, sir. I know, Nathan said, and that's why it matters. Clarence didn't ask for anything. He didn't even want to thank you. So, when Nathan Ashcroft told him he was offering something more, something real, Clarence thought maybe he misheard. A new position, he repeated carefully. Nathan nodded. I'm starting something. A community division of the Ashcroft Foundation. Outreach. Local programs. Veterans, low-income housing, job access. I need someone who knows what struggle feels like. Who understands dignity at its core. Clarence chuckled nervously. Sir, I don't know anything about foundations or nonprofits. You know how to show up. You know how to treat people. That's more than most executives I've met. Clarence blinked. I appreciate it. I do. But why me? Nathan leaned forward. Because you did the right thing when no one asked you to. And because I believe the world needs more people like you at the top, not just at the door. By the end of the week, Clarence had been quietly transitioned into a new role, community advisor to the Ashcroft Foundation. A title no one had heard of before. Because it hadn't existed. Nathan made it just for him. He was given a new office on the 17th floor, modest, but with a window and a real desk. He got business cards, a proper email address, a laptop, a new badge, and a raise, $82,000 a year, health insurance, retirement matching, paid vacation. When HR handed him the offer, Clarence just stared at the paper like it was written in another language. Is this real? He asked. The HR rep smiled. You've earned it. But not everyone agreed. Meet Julian Pratt, head of operations. Been with Ashcroft Global for 12 years. Sharp suits, slick back hair. Talks like he's permanently closing a deal. Julian didn't like surprises. And Clarence Moore was a surprise he didn't approve of. You're telling me, he said during a private meeting with Ava, the executive assistant, that the night shift security guard now has an office down the hall for me? He saved Mr. Ashcroft's granddaughter, Ava said, carefully, and he's been nothing but loyal to this company. Julian scoffed. There are dozens of qualified candidates who've been waiting for years to get a position like this. But a guy with no college degree, no business experience, no references gets handed a promotion just because he played the hero? Ava met his eyes. No, he gets it because he is one. Julian didn't argue further, not out loud. But in private, he started digging. 3 days into Clarence's new role, his badge suddenly stopped working at the elevator. Probably just a glitch, the receptionist said. But it happened again the next day. Then an anonymous email went out to several managers. FYI, have we properly vetted Mr. Moore's background? There's something fishy about this whole thing. No name attached, but it didn't take a genius to guess who sent it. Clarence noticed the shift. People in suits stopped making eye contact when he walked past. His emails took longer to get replies. In meetings, when he spoke, no one responded. They just moved on like he hadn't said anything. The janitors still nodded to him. The interns still smiled. But the ones in the tailored jackets? They looked at him like he'd wandered into the wrong room. Clarence didn't say anything. He kept showing up. On time. Prepared. He started drafting ideas for a mentorship program, pairing corporate employees with young men from neighborhoods like the one he grew up in. He pitched a proposal to sponsor GED programs for veterans. He even stayed late to answer handwritten letters from school kids asking for internships, and he never complained. But inside, he felt it creeping in. That old voice. You don't belong here. This isn't your world. You'll never be one of them. It came to a head during a staff meeting. Clarence had spent a week preparing a short presentation on an initiative to expand job fairs into underserved districts, complete with stats, projections, and testimonials from people he'd spoken to personally. He stood at the front of the glass-walled conference room, palms sweating, heart pounding. He wasn't used to presentations, but he believed in this. He spoke clearly, passionately, and when he finished, silence. A few awkward coughs. Someone checked their phone. Then Julian leaned back in his chair and smirked. Well, he said, that was heartfelt. Clarence froze. Julian continued, but I'm not sure how much logistical understanding went into this. Did you run this by finance? Legal? Who exactly is overseeing these numbers? I mean, it's great that you're passionate, Clarence, but this is a foundation, not a feel-good committee. Clarence stared at him. I did run it by finance, he said quietly. I got the numbers from Elaine Vasquez. She signed off. Julian shrugged. Still, I think we should leave program development to people who've done this before. No one said a word. Nathan wasn't in the room. Clarence gathered his notes and sat back down. Later that day, Clarence was in his office when Ava stopped by. She closed the door. I'm sorry about that, she said gently. Clarence forced a smile. It's all right. I've been looked through before. No, it's not all right, Ava said. You belong here. And Julian knows that. That's why he's scared of you. Clarence chuckled. Scared of me? He's scared of what you represent, she said. Proof that kindness matters more than credentials. That being decent counts for something. That scares people like him. Clarence looked down at his hands. They were still rough. Still calloused from years of work no one saw. He sighed. Sometimes it feels like I left one kind of invisibility and just stepped into another. That night, Clarence went home and stared at the photo of Elaine. He whispered, You'd laugh if you saw me in this suit. You'd say I look like a preacher. Then he got up, made a cup of tea, and went back to reviewing proposal drafts. But while Clarence worked, Julian moved. He reached out to a friend in media, fed them a story. Security guard turned executive. But is he really who he says he is? And he wasn't done yet. He pulled old employment records, looked for dirt, contacted someone at the fire department, and finally he found it. A disciplinary report. Minor. A case of Clarence missing protocol during a rescue. Officially resolved. But on paper, still a blemish. Julian smiled. It's just enough. It started with a headline. Posted at 6:14 a.m. Ashcroft Foundation's new advisor under fire. Hidden history emerges. The article wasn't long. Just long enough to cause damage. It referenced Clarence's time at the fire department. Highlighted a disciplinary report from 2008. Moore ignored direct command during rescue attempt. The story claimed he put another firefighter at risk. Left out the fact that the risk was saving a trapped baby. Left out the part where the command was outdated. Left out the letter of apology Clarence received from his chief years ago. But it didn't matter. The article used phrases like pattern of questionable judgment and lack of transparency. Anonymous sources. Vague allegations. Just enough smoke to suggest a fire. Within hours, the whispers in the office turned into silence. Cold, uncomfortable silence. Clarence saw the headline when he got off the bus. He stared at his phone for a full 5 minutes before putting it back in his pocket and walking into the building. Head up, shoulders back. No one said a word as he walked through the lobby. Even the janitor, who always gave him a nod, just looked away. At 9:03 a.m., he got the call. Mr. Moore, Mr. Ashcroft would like to see you in his office. Clarence's heart sank. He walked the now familiar path up to the 39th floor. When he stepped into Nathan's office, the air was heavier than usual. Nathan stood by the window, arms crossed, jaw tight. Clarence cleared his throat. I saw it. Nathan nodded slowly. They reached out to my office this morning. Asked for comment. I didn't hide anything, Clarence said. I know. They twisted it. I know that too. Clarence met his gaze. So what now? Nathan turned to face him. There was something in his eyes Clarence hadn't seen before. Doubt. You have to understand, Nathan said carefully, we're in the middle of finalizing a major partnership with a national education firm. They're sensitive to optics. They've already expressed concerns. Clarence's stomach turned. You think I'm a liability. I think the story's dangerous. But it's not true. I know. But in business, perception often matters more than truth. Clarence laughed, low, bitter, tired. I saved your granddaughter, sir. Not because she was a good look, because it was the right thing to do. And now, because someone doesn't like me, I'm back on the chopping block. Nathan said nothing. Clarence shook his head. I thought you were different. And with that, he turned and walked out. By noon, the building buzzed with new rumors. Clarence had walked out. Clarence had resigned. Clarence had been exposed. Julian smirked behind his coffee cup. Didn't take long, he muttered to a colleague. Karma, right? But karma has a sharp sense of irony. And she doesn't forget. Because what Julian didn't know, Clarence wasn't the only one being watched. 2 weeks earlier, Ava, the assistant who believed in Clarence, had noticed something strange. Emails sent from Julian's account to external reporters. Meeting invites with unknown names. One of them? A freelance writer from the site that published the hit piece. Ava didn't say anything. She just screenshotted everything. And when she saw Clarence walk out that morning, her heart dropped. She took her folder, printed copies, walked straight to Nathan Ashcroft's office, put it all on his desk. 10 minutes later, Nathan was calling Clarence. But Clarence didn't answer. He was already halfway across the city, sitting on a park bench near a rundown community center, the place he used to volunteer at, the place he and Elaine once took Malcolm to when he was 6. He sat there for hours, not thinking, just breathing. Back at Ashcroft Tower, everything was unraveling. Nathan read every email, every timestamp, the call logs, the meeting invites, the leaked attachments. It wasn't hard to put it together. Julian had orchestrated the entire smear campaign, had dug into Clarence's past, had manipulated the press, all to push him out quietly, because Julian didn't like what Clarence represented, because Julian couldn't stand that a good man had been invited to a table built for liars. Nathan didn't yell. He didn't rage. He called Julian into his office and said just one sentence. You're done here. Julian laughed. What, because of him? Nathan stood slowly. No, because of you. Then he handed Julian the printouts. Security will escort you out. And just like that, the man who tried to erase Clarence was the one who disappeared. But it didn't end there. Nathan wasn't content with silence. He went public at the next Ashcroft Foundation press event. In front of 300 guests and dozens of cameras, Nathan took the stage and said, sometimes it's easy to miss the people who keep our world turning. The ones who show up, do the work, tell the truth, even when no one's looking. Then he looked to the side of the stage. Clarence Moore, would you join me? Gasps, murmurs. Clarence, in a clean gray suit, stepped into the light. Nathan handed him a microphone. Clarence took a breath and said, I didn't come here to be praised. I came because someone finally saw me. And that's all most of us ever really want. The room stood up. By midnight, the speech had gone viral. Hashtag We See Clarence. Hashtag Grace Under Fire. Hashtag Let Good Men Lead. People across the country shared stories of janitors, bus drivers, lunch ladies, the quiet heroes. Clarence didn't read most of it. He just sat at home that night, opened his photo album, and whispered, We're okay now, Elaine. We're okay. 1 month later, the desk in Clarence's new office sat beneath a window that faced east. Every morning, sunlight poured in over the stacks of letters and notebooks he kept on the corner. Letters from kids in public schools, emails from veterans programs, thank you cards from single moms. He still came in early, still brewed his own coffee, still held the elevator for others. Nothing about Clarence more changed, except everything. Since the day of the Foundation's public event, Clarence had become something of a quiet legend. He never asked for fame, but the world gave him respect. His story spread across the country. Talk shows, podcasts, college classrooms. But Clarence stayed right where he was, building programs for people who reminded him of who he used to be. He launched a mentorship initiative, helped dozens of low-income kids find internships, set up GED access for returning citizens, organized transportation grants for night shift workers, and most of all, he showed up, every day, with that same calm walk, that same slow smile, that same spirit. Meanwhile, Julian Pratt disappeared into the shadows. Word of what he did had spread. No one wanted to touch him. He tried launching a consulting firm. Failed. Tried pivoting to real estate. Didn't last. Eventually, he ended up managing a shared office space in the suburbs, quietly watching people with dreams he no longer had. That's karma. Not always loud, but always fair. One evening, Clarence was in the community center on the south side, the same one he used to volunteer at. He was helping a teenager fill out a resume when he heard someone say his name. Soft, unsure. Dad? Clarence turned. At first, he didn't move, just stared. Same eyes, same walk, but taller now. Broader shoulders, a little scar on the chin. Malcolm? Clarence whispered. His son nodded. I saw you on YouTube, he said, voice cracking. I wasn't going to call, but I kept watching it, over and over, and I realized I've been angry for so long, I forgot what you were really made of. Clarence's eyes brimmed. I wasn't always the father you needed, he said quietly. And I wasn't the son you deserved, Malcolm replied. They stood there for a long moment. Then they hugged. And for the first time in years, Clarence didn't feel like he was carrying the weight of his past alone. That weekend, they had breakfast together. Pancakes, bacon, coffee. No tension, no pressure. Just two men, talking again. Malcolm had a baby girl now. Her name was Elaine. Clarence laughed when he heard it, said nothing, just reached into his wallet and slid out an old photo. His wife, holding baby Malcolm. He handed it over. Your daughter looks just like her, Clarence said. Same stubborn eyes. Malcolm grinned. You mean beautiful? Clarence raised an eyebrow. Same thing. Back at Ashcroft Tower, Clarence's story never faded, because he didn't let it. He created the Quiet Leaders program, spotlighting custodians, drivers, cafeteria workers, people who make the world go round but are never in the brochure. Once a month, he'd bring one of them to the foundation's big executive meeting. Let them speak. Let them be seen. One night, a board member whispered, "Doesn't this make the room feel too ordinary?" Clarence smiled. Exactly. On the anniversary of the night he saved Madeline Ashcroft, Clarence returned to the street where it all happened. She was there too, now 7 years old. She ran up to him, handed him a drawing. Stick figures. A man in a blue jacket, holding hands with a girl in a pink dress. Above them, big colorful letters, "My hero forever. Love, Maddie Purpleheart." Clarence held the drawing like it was made of glass. "Can I hang this in my office?" he asked. She nodded, "But only if you promise to never stop helping people." Clarence kneeled down, looked her in the eye. "I promise." That night, he sat on the same bench he used to eat dinner at alone, back when he was just the guy at the front desk. He looked out at the skyline. Towers of steel and glass. Lights blinking across windows. People going home. People still working. People who still might never see a man like him. But somewhere in that city, someone would. Sometimes, the good guys don't wear capes. They wear old jackets, work the night shift, and still show up the next day. They don't do it to be seen. But every once in a while, the world sees them anyway.